Okay, let's now talk, since we've already kind of bridged, let's talk about the role of our leaders. Let's talk about the role of the governance. Let's talk about some of these systems that we're identifying. For example, education, business ownership, home ownership, access to excellent education, and not just an institution to watch your kids during the daytime. Let's talk about some of these and how, particularly in the inner city areas, this has played at a strong disadvantage toward black people. What would you say?
Absolutely. I mean, years ago, one of the things that we've talked about in our household is, where we had one of our daughters in a certain school in Lexington, and they had us thinking she was some kind of child prodigy, that where she was so smart, this and that, heaping all this praise on her. But then we find out when we moved, and we was, into another school district, and still in Lexington, but there's a better school. And so when we got over there, we kind of find out that she's right where she needs to be, and it was because over at the one school where the expectations aren't the bar is not set, it's not set that high because we don't expect you to go that far anyway. And so over here at this other school where the bar is set higher, and so you figure out where you are is where you on par to where you need to be, but you need to rise up to meet these other expectations. And so I think that, when you start looking at the inner cities and things of that nature, the expectations aren't that high.
Right.
We're not. And so even in the inner, where you're looking at where we're coming up, where we're living and things of that nature, there's oftentimes nothing to aspire to or look to or what I can expect from my life, because and then you got that other dynamic where people don't expect anything of you, and so you got ones that are telling you, you shouldn't even try. To where I've got friends my age to where they were told when they were in school, you shouldn't try to go to college. Maybe you should be a janitor, try to be a janitor, or so things of that nature, where it's always that limiting aspect to where we don't expect much from you anyway.
Right.
And so, and to where we've had to, defy odds, and where people, even in the housing and, just all even beyond education, it's almost sometimes when you get that look like, what are you doing here? How did you get here? What do you do for a living? Things like that, those kind of questions, because we don't, on the other side of the aisle, we're not expecting you to be here because of all the obstacles we put in your way.
Yeah, I've just watched a rash, and I mean a rash. When I say a rash, 20 YouTube videos of people. The last one I just watched was one of the TSA federal agents, and she was in uniform, a black lady. She was driving down the highway on I-65, and she drove past a police cruiser that was, had the radar gun, and she was in the midst of a pack of cars, and she said, I know I'm going to be the one he pulls over. I'm not speeding. And she was the one he pulled over. And when he approached the vehicle and he saw her uniform, rather than feeling a sense of camaraderie, oh, you're a federal agent and whatnot, he put his hand on his gun. And he was a young white deputy, and said, let me see your hands. Her uniform was very visible, and obviously she has a firearm as a TSA worker. She was not one of the gate workers. She was one of the TSA officers. And, continually she's asking him, why am I being stopped? And he said, don't worry about that. Just give me your ID. Of course, she later comes back and says, as an officer, you are told when you approach a vehicle to say, my name is, good evening, my name is such and such, and the reason I pulled you over tonight or today is because this. And when it was all said and done, he gave her 2 tickets. One was following too closely another vehicle, and the other was being on her cell phone. And she said, number one, my cell phone was in this holster right here on Pandora playing my gospel music. Mm-hmm. And she said, and I wasn't fooling with it. And number two, there wasn't another car around me within 70 feet, which is the legal limit. If you breach 70 feet, then you're considered following too close. And she said, and everybody in law enforcement knows, if you get a citation for following too close, it's saying, I wanted to give you a ticket, and you'll go to court and get out of it, but I just wanted to inconvenience you. So she was crying and she was talking about that, but you and I have some mutual pastors who have found themselves continually stopped, pulled over. What's the reason you pulled me over today? You fit the description. I hear that a lot on the YouTube videos. Why are you detaining me? You fit the description. What does that do when you see an excessive display of policing toward racially profiling, maybe it would be the word, or for someone who thinks that's an unfair word, just the excessive policing of the black community?
The sad reality is that we're used to it. And it's a sad reality because we've grown to expect it. Mm-hmm. That if you're in what they would call a black neighborhood, and there's police there, you expect to get pulled over, even if you're not doing anything. And it's expected and it's frightening, especially here in the last little while. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that we know, especially as black men, we know that they can kill us and get away with it. We know that without shadow of a doubt. And so when we're pulled over, and when you're scared, you're panicking, you're frightened, you just look guilty, mm-hmm. even if I haven't done anything. And so I was pulled over on my way from Somerset one evening. Got pulled over right there in front of Stanford High School. Mm-hmm. It was me and my wife coming from Bible study. So, I don't guess I look like a threat. I don't know. But the thing about it, when he pulled me over, the first thing that come to mind, am I going to make it home? Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. I don't even care about the ticket. Write the ticket. But my thing is, am I going to make it home? Is my wife going to have to record me dying beside her? Mm-hmm. This is the first thing that comes to mind. Not the ticket. I was speeding. I was dead to the wrong. I'm thinking, the second thought, when he comes to the car, he comes up just like you said, the other guy, with his hand on his gun, things of that nature. I'm noticing it. I'm clean cut. I got on nice clothes. Don't look like a threat, I don't think. But my blackness is. Mm-hmm. It's already a threat. And so I'm acknowledging all these things, and I'm keeping my hands visible so that he can see that I'm not doing anything. Thank God I made it out of there. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. As black men, we shouldn't have to feel that way in America, mm-hmm. in a country that prides itself on, being free and justice and all these things that we pride ourselves on. At least we say that anyway, because it sounds good. But when you think about it, the average black man that gets pulled over, and you talk to 10 out of 10, I bet they will tell you that the first thought is, am I going to go home today? Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't be that way.
Now, here's a tough question. I'm thinking, I've got a lot of police officer friends, and they're just as decent as the day is long. One of the things they train in police training is that you have to be prepared to kill someone at any minute. You never know who it is that you're facing in any situation, whether it's a domestic call, whether it's just a routine taillight out, or whatever the case may be. And we live in a climate where just anybody can shoot you for any reason. And I know that also, as a part of police training, they do a lot of statistical training. They'll say, for example, in inner cities, this much percentage of crime is committed by this community, this much and so police tend to be, because of that training, more wary in an inner city. Now, Stanford is not an inner city. Stanford's way out. But what would you say to a police officer who wants to be a good, non-racial, but he still has to make sure he goes home at night? Because I think that's the vast majority, black or white police officers. I think we're seeing there's the same thing among some black police officers, a suspicion toward black people. So how could he do his job, but do it in such a way that we could eliminate this suspicion and at the same time protect him?
Community policing, getting involved with the community that you serve. And so if you're going to serve, because that's right there on the car, and it protect and
protect
serve,
and
right?
serve.
If I'm stating that wrong, I mean, please correct me.
No, you're
But
right.
right there on the car, to protect and serve. So if I'm going to serve, then I need to know the people that I'm serving. I need to get in and know the people. I can't just be on the outside and just coming in thinking that I'm going to police, because if I do that, then everybody in here is a suspect.
Right.
But if I get to know these people, whether it's black, white, Latino, Hispanic, whatever, because in every community, whether it's a black community, white community, those are the ones that are committing the crimes. Whether it's black community, white community,
Right.
Hispanic community, wherever you are, those are the ones that are committing the crime. But if you get in there and you get to know the people, you can build relationships, things of that nature. One of the things that I saw, police were called through this community in Florida, I think it was. Kids were playing basketball. Noise complaint. So the police come, and thank God they didn't break it up. Instead they played basketball with them.
Right.
Ended up getting courts built to where they can play. That's community policing, to where you get in and you get to know the people that you're called to serve. And I don't see how you can police without it. And so it's not and it's not that serve part. You can take that off the car. And so you can put to where, we're just looking at that these are everybody in this community. I'm just going to be a cop. I'm just going to police this neighborhood. Everybody in here is a suspect. That stop and frisk kind of stuff. That's policing, to where I don't trust anybody, to where everybody's a suspect. There's no community, right? The police don't know the neighborhood, and the neighborhood don't know the police. And so what they need, what I think, is that the police and the community come together and get to know one another. That way things are, because it's harder when you start thinking about when you know somebody's child, or you know somebody's son, or you know somebody's daughter. You would think that you would deal differently with them once you get to know who they are.
Yeah.
And I think until that happens, then I don't think that we're going to be able to bridge that serve part, or that protect and serve part, especially with this because as black men, as a black man, I'm gonna say this because and I say this that to where because one of the things that we don't like to be done to us is to be painted with a broad stroke and say that, because we all fit the suspect, we all fit the description or whatever, and so we don't say that all cops are bad, right? We don't say that, not most of us. And so when we say that, but when things that we've been saying about racism, about our silence being complicit. You know, if you are a good cop, but you are operating with bad ones, right? In the court of law, if I'm in the car with somebody and they commit a crime and I didn't do anything, I'm an assailant, or I'm an accessory. Even if I didn't do anything, and I can be found guilty just based on that. So if the good cops are willing to be silent, aren't they as guilty? The chief of police here in Somerset, really good guy. And I think that he does a good job with the police here. But at the same time, if we are to look at it, because what we do, what's done is we place all the police in the same category. And what we say is one bad apple spoils a bunch, right? And so we all have to, I think that we have to say something, right? When these things happen with George Floyd and with Ahmaud Arbery and Tamir Rice and things of that nature, when these things happen, I think the police who say that they are good cops need to say something.
What about, and this is something that I hear a lot in mostly predominantly the white community and conservative circles. So there's a police shooting of a black man, and an investigation begins. Anytime there's a shooting, there's always an internal investigation. The officers in almost every department, I would imagine every department across the country, are put on administrative leave. During that time, they're given counseling as needed, etc. And the department conducts not only a review of the facts of the case, but they also do an internal review. In some places, as it is in Louisville, there's a civilian review board that also is conducting an investigation. The way that I've tried to understand the flashpoints that are happening, for example, the Breonna Taylor case, that immediately was a flashpoint because of George Floyd, because of Ahmaud Arbery. There was already the angst that these things are happening and there's no justice. But the investigation there still isn't complete. There's a lot of questions to be answered, but I think a lot of people have already drawn conclusions as to what this was. Should we wait until a matter has been investigated and adjudicated in a court of law and assigned guilt or innocence to make value judgments, or help me understand that process? Because I think a lot of white people are saying they haven't even let there be a trial yet. They haven't even let them have their due process or a day in court to see, are they guilty?
I think if we're going to put it on that side, then we need to do that across the board, right? Because oftentimes, even though we say it innocent until proven guilty, as a black person, oftentimes you're going in guilty until proven innocent, and the justice system is flawed. I mean, we've been knowing this. This is not even it's not even debatable. It's flawed. It's jacked up, because if you can, it's not even about justice as it is about money. Because if you can buy your way out of it, if you can afford the lawyer fees and things of that nature, you can get all these things. And so it's about the money more than it is justice. And so if we're going to say that we should let due process play out, yeah, that's true. But it should be across the board, because how long does it take to investigate a shooting? Because it had that been, you know, just a regular civilian, a Joe Blow shooting in somebody's house, and they done killed this woman while she's sleeping, it would have been an open and shut case. And so, but since it's the police, we want to say, you know, I'm not even gonna say we. Some people want to say that we need to wait for due process. We need to be able to look at it from all angles. You know, we need to get the forensics and make sure that it was actually their bullets and all these different things. What are we looking for? We're looking for a way out. That's what they're looking for. We're looking for a way not to prosecute these cops that killed that woman. And the thing about that is, folks are tired of it. Folks are sick of it. For too many years, we've been seeing this happen to where young black people, it's just been killed. I didn't even say like animals, because animals are treated better. And so people are tired of it, and they're seeing this, and they're watching it unfold. And in the back of our minds, we know they're going to get off. That's what's going on in the back of our minds.
Well, I get that. The way I described it on my page, I think you liked it, was back in the military in 1988, I had a very bad vehicle accident. And because of that, I had head and chest injuries, and they had to do an internal procedure on me, but they couldn't use any anesthesia. And so they did it without anesthesia. And because of that, they couldn't give me any painkillers afterwards. So for 24 hours, I was left writhing and screaming in pain from that procedure. And I didn't pass out until they finally gave in and gave me some morphine and took care of the pain. And my point was that during that 24 hours, you could have come to me and said, "Hey, Ed, I'd like to talk to you." I couldn't have talked to you because I was in pain. You could have said, "Hey, Ed, I want to give you $1 million. All you got to do is sign right here." I couldn't have signed my signature because I was in pain. There was nothing I could do because that pain was so intense that all I could do was scream and cry. And until I got that painkiller, I wasn't even in my right mind. But once I got the painkiller, then I was able to rest and start the healing process. And I think that, as you mentioned, this rash of televised police killings, many that have been proven to be unjust, and murder, have so ignited the pain in the black community that could it be, so for example, in Missouri, where, and see, this is part of the problem. The young man, oh my goodness, I just had his name on my mind. Well, anyway, he had gone in and robbed a convenience store. And then he was walking down the street. The police officer approached him, and the versions of the story were two. One was hands up, don't shoot. The other was he tried to get into the car and take the weapon from the police officer, and he ended up being shot and killed. The police officer had a broken eye socket. And they said the amount of force it would have taken to break that eye socket was pretty significant. And his body cam seemed to back up his version of the story, along with the robbery that had just happened. The evidence comes out later, but it's too late. Missouri, St. Louis had already been torn up because of the immediate reaction. And unfortunately, before they could even fix that one, the fella who was just selling cigarettes in New York, big guy, he'd just gone down to Virginia, bought cartons of cigarettes, and was selling them in New York because New York has such heavy taxes that he could sell them on the street and make money. They choked him out and killed him. Mm-hmm. And so that went away, and this became the new issue. I just wonder if the pain is so intense that we might be missing, and I agree with you. I think the mob rules mentality is wrong. I also think the selective application of due process is wrong. I think the question is, how do we get to that complete, total, fair application of due process for all people? And I think one of the things you mentioned is good, the community policing. Not dismantling the police departments. In fact, most black communities in major cities, by somewhere on the order of 68%, want more police, not less police. But I think if I hear you correctly, you've got to know your people, and your people have to know you. They have to know your heart, you have to know their heart before you can be effectively policing. So I see this as part of what you were referring to as systematic racism. It's not just one portion that's causing it's all of it together that the black community is just, until we find the solutions, this is a situation that's really dangerous in our country for them and for everyone, for all of us together.
There's been the mantra, over the years, no justice, no peace. America has long thought that we have had peace, but there's been no justice. I mean, we can go back years and years and years. There still hadn't even been justice for Emmett Till. And so we can go back years and years, and you can think that we're living in some kind of utopian peace, to where there's peace here, but there's been no justice. And so what we've had is a calm, a simmering volcano that at any given time it can erupt, all because of this justice issue. When Jesus came on the scene, I talked about this earlier, when we talked about when he did his inauguration speech, when he came and he talked to the people and he was telling them why the message that he was about to preach, why he came, the Spirit of the living God is upon me and anointed me to preach the gospel. And he talked about who he's going to preach to, what he's going to preach. You start to think about what in the world did he say that would cause them to want to kill him. Because what he's saying is going to disrupt all of the things that we have grown comfortable with. And so even going back that far, we can push forward all the way to all of the change agents that have come. Going back to Lincoln, a change agent, he was killed. MLK, a change agent. Malcolm X, change agent. All these change agents that are going to come in and disrupt what we have grown accustomed to, the status quo or whatever that is. And so in looking at all of that, to where ones who have been killed that would dare come in and change things to where this is going to disrupt the status quo of how we have grown accustomed to living. Without justice, all we have is a calm, and that volcano is going to erupt.
Right. If I understand you correctly, it's like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's like some of us have been living with the calm, calling it peace.
Right.
And because it doesn't affect us and it's not an issue for us, then we've thought, why all of a sudden now? What happened now that everybody's all up in arms? I don't get it. Well, it's because we've been living in veritable peace. And you could argue America is the best Babylon on the face of the planet, but it's still Babylon. And there are problems in Babylon. And so we're kind of running low on time. The one thing we want to get to, and I think there's going to be a part two, the one thing we want to get to the theological underpinnings of the church, the black church and the white church, and what needs to be done to bridge there. And for those of you who are just saying, my goodness, you're just getting good. This is just getting to the point where it needs to be. It's our intention to continue this video series. It's our intention to continue moving with this forward and exploring it, because our goal is not just to expose the problems or the raw nerves. Our stated goal between Brother Yusuf and I is to find a way forward And we're going to either get there or die trying, one of the two. So thank you for tuning in, and we will be back with you to discuss some very heavy issues. As always, I want to thank Brother Yusuf for being here today. And man, he's just a great guy. If you're anywhere near Somerset and you want to go to his church, it is South Maple Street First Baptist Church. You will not be sorry. He's a phenomenal preacher. His testimony is incredible, from the penitentiary to the pulpit. You ought to check him out sometime and listen to his testimony. And so, Brother Yusuf, thank you for being here, brother.
Amen. Amen. God bless.
And so we'll tune in next time. Hope you got your bait and you're ready to go and you're teased. And I think it's going to be a wonderfully beneficial series. So God bless you, and we'll see you soon.